Alrighty, so let's go ahead and just write another mixin. It'll be very similar, but it's good to get the practice in. So again, remember, you want to define your mixins before you use them, otherwise you'll get an error. So the next mixin I want to do is going to be inner top highlight. Let's say I want to make it so that I can highlight or make this little highlight or effect on certain elements by computing a sort of highlight value on a base color. So it's a little bit more of a complex example. I'm going to have this mixin taking one parameter of base color. And what he's going to do is he's going to do border left is going to be 1px solid, and then I'm going to say lighten base color by 5%. And then I'm going to copy and paste this 2 more times, and I'll do this on border top and border right. So border left, border top, and border right will now be 1 pixel, solid, and they'll have the lightened color of the base color. So this is a cool little way to where I can sort of make this like cheap little highlight effect based on an existing color in the context of anywhere in my application without having to hard code that color in every time I repeat myself with border left, border top, and border right. We could use more advanced color functions here, like, you know, maybe saturating or desaturating or something like that. But I'm just keeping things simple here for this example. All right, so how do we use this? Well, I'm going to jump into selected again. The same guy. Remember, the selected, that rule applies to our selected anchor tag. And after top radius, I'm going to say inner top highlight. And for the base color, what I want to pass in is the color of the background of where this element is. Now, what's the color of the background of where this element is? Well, it's header-background. All right, off screen, I'm going to go ahead and run npm run styles to compile that. And now you see right here, this rule got these 3 parameters, border left, border top, border right, with the properly lightened background color. So let's go ahead and see how that looks. Jumping back here, I'm going to refresh, and we didn't quite get the effect we were looking for because on the selected or on the navigation, what I wanted to do here actually was for my selected element, I wanted to give it the background not of color accent but of header border, and I wanted to also do that on our hover. Because with that color accent, it's not going to show off our highlights very well. But now that we'll darken the color a little bit and go ahead and recompile that. Sorry, I just used the wrong variable. Now coming back here, the great thing about that is it applied those rules. And if we come back here and hit refresh, we can now see that little highlight there in the background of the border of the element. Alrighty, so that's the header. Again, here's the less for that. As you can see, we're already using basically the most important features of less that you're going to be using. Functions, mixins, nested rules, variables. Those are the big 4 things that you're going to be using all the time once you kind of get used to working with this. So let's go ahead and finish off this example by implementing our body. Now for the body, I'm going to introduce another mixin, but I'm going to do it in a strange way. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a mixin, and I'm just going to call this default text. But I'm just going to use a class selector. So this is just a straight up class selector. And I'm going to give this a line height of 1.6 em and a margin bottom of 10. Actually, I'll do a margin 0 to start off with, and then I'll override the margin bottom of 10. And so the default text, you'll think, well, that doesn't really look like a mixin. There's no parameter list or anything. And you'd be right. This is just a straight up class selector. In fact, if I were to go ahead and compile it, and I scroll down here to wherever the mixins is included, which is about the middle here, default text is now just being rendered out as a basic class selector. But what's cool about it is we can still use it as a mixin. See, in less, you don't have to explicitly declare, or you can reuse any straight-up class selector as a mixin. So let's see how we can do that. Jumping over here, I'm going to open up our body.less, and I'm going to go ahead and say site-wrap.body, and I'm going to say, I'm going to go ahead and select the p elements, the paragraph elements, and I'm going to say default text, and then I'm going to invoke it with parentheses. Off screen, I'm going to go ahead and recompile that. And now if I search for that rule, so site-wrap-body, notice how that mixin did get applied. But it's not really a mixin, it's just a straight up class selector. And we can see over here, if I hit refresh, that our line height did change. Maybe I didn't want to reset that margin to 0. Give stuff a little bit more room to breathe. There we go, that looks better. So now you see the line height of our paragraph elements changed. So again, in Less, you can go ahead and you can use any normal class selector as a mixin, but that's not necessarily what you would always want to do. If you're creating a mixin, and specifically creating a mixin to be a mixin, you shouldn't just use a normal class selector, because that's going to really pollute your CSS file. As you see, up here, we're getting this default text rendered out. We don't really want that. We just want to be able to use default text as a mixin, but not have it rendered. So to fix that, all we have to do is provide an empty parameter list. This tells Less that this is a mixin. Do not treat it as a normal CSS rule. Do not emit it, but allow it to be included as a mixin. So I'll go ahead and compile. And notice after compiling, that default text class selector went away. But if I scroll down to the bottom here and look at my site wrap body p, notice how the values of that mixin were still included. All right, the last thing I want to do is, let's go ahead and we can close that out. And I'm going to open up my footer. And let's go ahead and style our footer real fast. This is really just for sake of completeness and because I like writing CSS. I'm going to go ahead and say site wrap footer dot footer, derp. And I'm going to give it a padding of 10 pixels. Let's give it a background of darken background by 5%. And let's give it a border top of, let's say 2 pixels solid lighten background at 5%. Now I'll go ahead and recompile off screen, and we'll see this rule properly coming in with the properly processed colors. And if we come back over here into Chrome and hit F5 or hit the refresh button, we see that indeed our footer was rendered properly. So yeah, let's go ahead and close out my working files here just for cleanliness. I guess the last thing to show is what if I wanted to change the background color? So we've based a lot of our colors off of lightening and darkening the background color, kind of giving us a really nice little monochromatic website here with a nice little accent. But if I jumped in here to site.less, all I have to do is come here in the background, and maybe instead of doing this really dark gray, maybe we add some blue to it. So I'll go ahead and do, let's do 15152B here. And then off screen, I'm going to go ahead and recompile the script, or the styles. And let's go ahead and open up Chrome and refresh. Notice how we now get this nice little purple color, but that everything is, because everything is based off that base background color, everything still looks right. There's no conflicting colors here. So it's a really great way to build websites, taking advantage of variables and functions. And I encourage people to do that, to think not only of what colors look good, but how the colors relate to each other so that you can make really customizable styles. But I think that's about it. Again, I just wanted to introduce Less. I wanted to introduce the 4 major features so that, well, A, I can use Less in the rest of the course, but B, we can start to see how writing a build script using Gulp and a build system using Gulp is going to really make our sites, or the process of building our sites a whole lot easier. I guess the last thing is me just going to be repeating myself here, but definitely if you're interested about more features, hop over to lesscss.org, check out the language features section. There's a whole page of documentation here, in addition to the function reference. And if you're feeling adventurous, check out Sass. Sass is great, works fine in Node. Now with the new C compiler, you don't need Ruby installed to work with it. And now that if you understand these 4 basic features, you'll get right going with Sass pretty easily, but there'll be some syntax differences that you'll have to be aware of. But I think that just about wraps this up, and we'll see you guys in the next video.